Hi, Bill Graveland from the Canadian Press. Since it doesn't appear that they were in Regina after all, assuming that they were up there all along, how does this impact your searching now? What's the next step?
I'm going to have Chief Bray answer that because some of the information has changed, but not all. We still have some relevant information.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think, the most important thing to say is the information that we received yesterday about that vehicle being in the city with two people in the vehicle that matched the description is still relevant and believed to be true information. So I think, we're quite confident in those facts. We've been doing investigations based on that, and investigative work has corroborated some of those points. So as far as the ongoing investigation goes, we are still operating under the impression that Myles is in the city of Regina. It's unknown at this time who the other person in the vehicle was, if that was indeed Myles that was in there. The person that provided that initial information to us obviously was not able to say definitively who the people were in the car, but that it was that car and that there were two people in it. And further investigative efforts have corroborated much of that story. So we are still operating under the impression that Myles is in this community, and our efforts will continue working with the RCMP. As we've said before, that information is now dated and we haven't had any updates from it. So is it possible that they're no longer in this community? It is possible, but we don't have any information to disprove or point us either way on that.
And just to follow up, I'm thinking it's not wrong to assume that you believe that Myles is a suspect in the death of Damien?
We haven't confirmed that. We can't say one way or the other. If Myles was involved in the death of Damien, it is an investigative avenue that we are following up on, but we can't say that definitively at this point in time.
Alex Salome, Regina Leader-Post. I guess the question that I have here relates to the 19 injured. How many are in critical condition? We've seen obviously go from 10 now to 11. Is there an expectation that the fatalities here are going to grow? Can you speak to the state of the 19 injured people?
I can't speak to the medical condition of any of the persons who were injured, but we can confirm that there are 19 persons who were injured as a result of these attacks.
But you can't say if anybody's in critical condition?
At this point in time, no.
Okay. A question for Police Chief Bray. Again, the information continues to change. Obviously, the assumption was that both these men were in the city as of yesterday at noon. We're going off of information about the whereabouts of these people that was at one point a day old. I'm going to ask this again. How confident are you that Myles is in Regina right now, and why are you confident that he is?
Well, I think the most recent reliable information we have says that he is in Regina or was in Regina. The most recent. That most recent information is a day old. We acknowledge that, but we have nothing that can tell us differently. And so we're going to continue to operate on that. Keep in mind, this is eyewitness information that provided details on seeing the car, confirming the plate. There was follow-up investigation that was done there, but there's a lot of ongoing investigation that's happening by both the RCMP and the Regina Police Service, and we are very confident that Myles was in the city yesterday. Up until 2 hours ago, we assumed that it was both of them, but having said that, we are confident that there were two people in that vehicle, and so at this point, we don't know who else was in the vehicle.
Have you found the vehicle?
We have not located the vehicle.
Hi there, Shane Clausing, 980 CJB News. I just want to know, what's the message to people right now of James Smith Cree Nation? Obviously, one of the suspects was just found dead there. Is there still a pretty large threat to that community? What's policing like? And I guess what is the situation going on right there right now?
We have a significant presence of police officers at James Smith Cree Nation. As you can imagine, it takes a significant amount of resources to process 13 crime scenes. So there is a large police presence there that will continue for several days, many days yet. As far as the threat, Myles Sanderson is still at large. We still are advocating for people to be vigilant, to remain vigilant. He is considered dangerous. His actions have shown that he is violent, and so we're continuing to emphasize for people to remain vigilant. Those James Smith Cree Nation and the province of Saskatchewan and our neighboring provinces.
And this next question is for Constable Bray. How and where do you even begin to describe a situation like this that's happening in Regina? I mean, this must be, at least for the public, this seems like a needle in the haystack, kind of.
Yeah, and I think I've said this a couple of times before. We have hundreds of resources between the RCMP and the Regina Police Service working on this, and we're really coming at it from all angles. So there's not one. There's a lot of different ways to investigate this, and it's challenging because if you hear the feedback from the community or read social media, there's assumptions being made that certain things aren't being done. I can tell you with definitive assurance that tech crimes are involved in this. We have our investigative crimes involved in this. We have various different areas within our investigative services uniformed. We've got emergency services teams, not just with our police service, but with the RCMP. Air support is here, thanks to the RCMP and neighboring provinces. So there's a lot of efforts being put into this, and those efforts are not just within the city of Regina. Those include traffic services out on the highway. Those include working in communities with the RCMP. So from an investigative standpoint, you're right. We don't have any one specific area that we can focus in on and start going down that path to determine whether or not we might actually be able to locate Myles. Having said that, we do investigate every tip that comes in, every piece of information, and we reiterate once again the importance of getting this information in here. There are people that possess knowledge about Myles, where he is, about information that occurred over the last 24 to 48 hours that is going to be very, very important to this investigation. So once again, we reiterate to the community, we need to hear from you. Please reach out to the police or reach out to an organization that can get information to the police and provide us with what ultimately could be the missing piece to help tie this up and ultimately take Myles safely into custody and allow not only the investigation to continue, but I think as importantly, we recognize there's a lot of grief with tragedy like this and unknown whereabouts. There's a lot of anxiety in our province right now, in our communities and throughout the country. And so, we need to start the healing process. And until we can make this arrest, that isn't going to happen.
Hi, Heather Butts with CTV National News. I'm just wondering if you could expand on the injuries that you believe Myles sustained. What is it that has led you to believe that? And just if you could confirm that he is now one of the 19 injured that you're counting?
He is one of the 11 deceased that we're counting. Sorry, Myles? You said,
Correct.
Myles? Yes. So his injuries, we can't confirm those injuries, but we do have strong reason to believe that he has sustained some injuries. We're not exactly sure what those injuries are.
And he's one of the 19 that you're now counting?
Yes. Yes.
Tegan Rasha with Global News. Have you been able to think of what the possible motive could be for this?
That's still part of the investigation that will be ongoing for quite some time. We haven't established a motive at this point in time, but it is definitely part of the investigation.
And Myles could obviously be anywhere. Is there concern he could try and flee to the United States?
We have made notification to Canadian Border Services Agency, so they are aware of his wanted status, and any identification he would provide would indicate on police record checks that there's a warrant for his arrest.
Brianne Foley, CTV Regina. You did say that some of the attacks were known and some of them were random. Would we classify Damien as one of the known ones at this point?
At this point in time, yes. Prior to us having located Damien's body, there were other persons who we believe were targeted in these attacks.
And do you know how many were targeted and how many were random at this point?
I can't say that for certain, no.
Perfect. And then is there aerial searches going on, and if so, where?
Yes, there are continuing aerial searches. We have multiple surveillance aircraft that are here in the province assisting us and conducting those searches in the areas that are designated as required by the investigative teams.
And still no word on the exact weapon that was used?
No.
Hi, Jade McMillan, Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Are you able to provide any information at this point in time on the people who have lost their lives? Anything about their ages, genders, where they've come from, anything like that?
The only information we know is that there were no children or infants attacked that we're aware of. The ages are older than that. There is a wide span of ages of these individuals. Both males and females were victims of the attack.
I think there was one report that suggested there was a 14-year-old boy. Are you saying that is not correct, or what is the age cutoff there?
I believe the youngest age is a person who was born in 1999.
Thank you.
John Cairn, Sask today. I'm just curious if you have any updated photos of Myles that you'd be able to share with the public. I know that there's been, on social media, there's been photos of Myles that have been shared out there, and just wondering if you're planning to do the same fairly soon.
The investigative team is working on that right now to determine if an updated photo would better reflect his current what he looks like now. Keeping in mind, he may also have injuries as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just to clarify something, were you saying that Damien was one of the people that was targeted by Myles? I just want to clarify a question that was answered earlier.
We can't say for sure how Damien came to be deceased, but he could potentially have been. We can't say that for certain.
Hi, Gareth Dillistone with CTV Regina. In your experience in decades of policing, I mean, here we're having a news conference on a Monday, a statutory holiday. We have the Regina Police Chief, the Assistant Commissioner for F Division. You're in the building, you're wearing your duty belts. How big of a crisis is this from a law enforcement point of view in your experience?
This is a significant event to the province of Saskatchewan. I don't think anyone would dispute that. We have a significant number of deceased individuals, and it is something that has been made our highest priority. From myself and Chief Bray right on through down to our frontline members, we are working extremely hard to apprehend Myles and as well to process the crime scenes and make sure that the families have the information that they are seeking and need. So there are certainly a lot of different avenues to this situation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Were they brothers or cousins? Is there any relationship that you can disclose at this point?
We have been able to confirm that Damien Sanderson and Myles Sanderson are brothers.
Understood. The other thing, yesterday during the press conference, you weren't able to share details about their criminal record, if the pictures shared were mugshots. Myles has been unlawfully at large since May 27th. I guess, why wasn't that communicated earlier to the public, and why wasn't that communicated specifically yesterday during media availability when we were all here?
Right. So we're gathering more information. We have been able to confirm Myles' criminal record. He does have an extensive and lengthy criminal record. The information yesterday that was important for us to get out was the fact that he was a dangerous and violent offender. Having committed first-degree murder is indicative of that, obviously. So that was the priority for our information, to get that information out to the public.
But he was known to police?
Definitely known to police, yes.
Do you know if the two people who were going out yesterday on the killing spree, if they were attacking each other at the same time, or victims at the same time, or did they kind of separate and go their own ways?
We can't speak to that at this point in time. That's part of the investigation. The investigative team is putting together the chronology of how the events unfolded. Because as you can appreciate, as the calls came into our operations center, that doesn't necessarily mean how those victims were attacked in that order. So that's all part of the investigative process as they put that together.
Are you able to describe Damien's wounds? You just said that he was injured and found deceased.
At this point in time, I can't speak to that right now.
Okay, and you have said that this was a stabbing. It's being talked about as, one of the biggest mass murders in Canada. It's different because it's a stabbing. Are you able to say if all 10 victims prior to Damien's death were stab wounds?
We believe the victims were stabbed, but that is still being confirmed at this point in time to make sure that we have confirmation of that. But that is our belief at this point in time, yes.
And given the fact that he was found on the First Nation, you believe Myles may be in that area. How wide is your search net right now? What are you telling people of the province and neighboring provinces?
So right now we can't, similar to what Chief Bray said, we can't eliminate anything. And so the information we had yesterday with the witness account that we believe they at that time, now we believe to be Myles, was in the city of Regina, was the last credible information we have. But we can't discount any of those investigative avenues. So we're making sure that we're keeping our investigative possibilities open because we certainly don't want to be limited in our view of this.
You were anticipating information on the victims. At what time can we anticipate that today?
We're still waiting to get confirmation from the family members. So I don't have a specific time for you, but hopefully we can have that later today or tomorrow for you.
I guess, Chief Bray, as people are getting ready to send their kids to school tomorrow, as people are getting ready to go back to work tomorrow, what message you have for people in Regina as this manhunt continues and as we have very little information about where this guy might be outside of knowing that he is violent and is frequently killed in the recent dates?
So I'll start by saying we have a large number of resources on this, and we will continue to have those resources working on this until we either locate and safely arrest Myles or prove that he is no longer in this community. And that's something that we're working on constantly with the RCMP. Obviously yesterday we had a very large event in the city with the Rider game, thousands of people in the city. And so we took steps to ensure that we had extra resources to enhance safety. I think a big part of it is communication and continuing to communicate with the public. And we will continue to do that as well. Any new developments that come, any changes that may happen over the next few hours between now and tomorrow. At the end of the day, as we've been talking about, and you brought up earlier, this is the most recent credible information we have, but it's also quite stale. And so we can't say for certain that he is still in the community, but we're operating as if he is. And so we will continue to exercise safety and diligence. We encourage people to be aware and report anything that seems suspicious or out of the ordinary. Again, people understand, people know their surroundings better than anyone. And so oftentimes it's not as simple as the police coming in and doing searches in neighborhoods or in areas, but if people see something that's disturbed, we had a call the other night, a person called us to say, I haven't used my garage in a long time, but I noticed that some stuff has been moved and I think someone's opened the door in the garage. That's a very pertinent piece of information. Turned out to be not related to this incident, but anything like that people notice, they should report. We will investigate, and I think that's what's going to be successful in resolving this.
But for a nervous parent putting their kid on a bus tomorrow, how concerned should we be?
Well, I mean, I think at this point we have no information to lead us to believe that there is an imminent threat right now to anyone or any one person in this city, but we recognize we have not arrested this individual. The information is old, albeit the most recent we have, that he was in this community. And so I would encourage parents to exercise diligence and caution, making judgment statements on those types of things. There's a fine line between making sure that we're diligent in reporting information and giving people all of the information they need, and giving what I would say a false sense of worry in terms of the situation and the danger that's present in the community. So as we continue to gather information, as we continue to investigate this, we'll continue to communicate with our community on that and hopefully be able to provide some positive information between now and tomorrow morning.
Can you give any detail on Myles's lengthy record? Like what it's been convicted of?
Myles' record dates back quite a number of years, and it includes both property and persons crimes. So persons crimes are those committed against other individuals. Obviously, property crimes involved theft or damage to property.
So some violence?
Yes.
In the person's crimes?
Yes. I don't believe there's anything on his record for a previous homicide. That is what he is currently wanted for, is for first-degree murder, though.
Can you speak to the fact that he has been missing since May, has not been found? There's reports that he may have taken an ankle bracelet off. Is that alarming?
I can't speak to any of the measures, such as the ankle bracelet. There were warrants for his arrest, but I can tell you there are many individuals in this province who have warrants for arrest. So, we do have a specialized team. We have the warrant enforcement suppression team. That is their focus. That was as a result of resources provided to the RCMP by the province of Saskatchewan last fall. So that team is up and running as of the last few months, and that is their focus. But given the number of people on warrant status in the province, they have to risk manage files as they come into their acknowledgement. Yeah.
If there's an update tonight, how can we expect it?
It will depend on what the update is. If it's related to the emergency alert and updates to that, it will go out through the emergency alerting system. Any media releases will go out in the normal distribution. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.